What's going on, everybody? My name is Derek, and welcome to my channel. So, real quick, I want to make a video here about my grandmother's burial. Now, this has been a story y'all have been following between my channel and my mother's channel, and by now, if you've been keeping up with my mother's channel, obviously you know that we were in Maine last week for the burial. Uh, so now I've wanted to have a chance to talk about it. We flew up to Maine on Tuesday, early morning, last Tuesday. As I record this on July 25th, let me look at the dates here. So we flew out on July 19th, early. Um, and left Memphis, I think, at like 5:30 in the morning. Landed in Chicago, a little layover there, quick one, and then landed in Manchester, New Hampshire, and then from there made our way through Sanford first to so my mom could meet with the priest, I believe, or someone that was in charge of the burial, and then from there went to my aunt Dolly's house in Waterboro, Maine, my mother's sister. So it was weird. This is the first time that I go home and not stay at my mother's house slash grandmother's house, the house that we all grew up in Sanford, because my mother has since sold it. So we stayed at my aunt's house in Waterboro, Maine, which was different. She's old school. She doesn't have AC. Now in Maine, it might have a heat wave here and there, but the summers are pretty mild, especially when the sun goes down and it turns into evening. Then it's pleasurable. It's pretty nice. You get a little breeze, throw up some fans, and it's not that bad. Well, it just so happens that our first 2 days in Maine is like their heat wave, and the heat in Maine, and I forgot about this. Compared to down here, it's an oven. Down here in Mississippi, Memphis area, it's an oven, and it's super humid. Heat index over 100 degrees every day, probably through mid-August, and then it'll be in the 90s up well into September. But high humidity, high heat, it's like an oven here. The sun goes down and you can still feel it. In Maine, if Maine has a little heat wave, the temperature isn't super high. It might hit the low 90s, but it's the kind of humidity. When it gets really bad there, it's so wet. It's very wet humidity. And I didn't realize that. Or maybe I forgot that. I don't know. It's the first time I go to Maine during a little heat wave like that. Usually I go to Maine during the summertime and it's Maine summer and I bring a hoodie because it might get a little chilly at night. But the first 2 days we were there, it was saturated. It was so wet and no AC in this house that we were staying in. I digress. That's not the point of this story. But so we stay in Waterboro. We get there Tuesday. The following day, Wednesday, is the day. So we all met at I think we met at the graveyard, the grave site. Let's say 10:30 in the morning. And they already had the hole dug up and everything, and there was a box over it, and they were waiting for us. And the priest, shortly thereafter, after we all arrived, showed up. It was me and my mom and Skylar, and then my aunt Dolly, and her three kids, my cousins, Ronnie, Scott, and Wayne, and then Ronnie's two kids, his two daughters, and Wayne's son and daughter. So the whole gamut, the whole like immediate family was there, and it was hot, but we all didn't let that bother us. Priest was really cool. I know my grandmother would have appreciated him and the little service that she got. We did have her cremated, which was interesting. We flew my grandmother back home in a little box, and I kind of laughed with my mother because if you've known the story about us flying her to here from Maine back in last November, that was quite the journey, to say the least. Moving a 90 at the time 98-year-old woman who can't use her legs, moving her from Maine to Mississippi through two airports, driving, I had to wheel her into my apartment using my office chair because we didn't have our own wheelchair. On and on and on. It was crazy, difficult and stressful. But now we're flying her back to Maine in a suitcase. Not to be insensitive, but I try to see the humor in things. So, but the service went really well without a hitch. What was cool is after the priest gave his little sermon, and uh, then it was time to actually place the urn in the ground, which, by the way, was something really cool. Before we backtrack here a little bit, before we went to the funeral home, uh, not the funeral home, sorry, the service, the graveyard, the gravesite. My mom pulled up a bunch of rosaries that belonged to my grandmother and gave some out, and whoever wanted a rosary was able to get one. And then my mom put a rosary, maybe even two, in the ashes. So my grandmother was buried with her favorite thing in the world, her rosary. I think she's done enough praying for all of us over her 99 years on earth. But so then the crew comes in and they glue the plastic casing that the ashes go into, and then they put it in the hole, and then they start filling the hole. So my cousin Wayne did something that was, I'm glad he's so glad he did it, and I wouldn't even have thought to do this. Without asking, he just went to the dirt that they were using to fill the hole. They pulled up with a little tractor, like a little front bucket hoe tractor, and just had some fresh dirt in there, soil. So he went over there and just grabbed a handful and threw it in the hole. I was like, wow, that's cool. I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. And the gentleman that was shoveling the stuff, he's like, oh yeah, no problem, sure you can. He's like, does someone want to use the shovel? I was like, I do. So I went and I grabbed a couple shovelfuls, put them in the hole. My mom did one. Skylar grabbed a shovel and put a shovel's full worth of soil in the hole. And then I think mom and Skylar both did a little handful too. Some of my other cousins did a handful. I don't think everyone did. But, and I wish I would have done the handful too, because I think that's a little more connected to the earth, doing it with your hand. Didn't think of it though, but I did shovel some dirt in there. So I thought that was really cool. And then once they packed all the ground down and got it flushed, then they just poured grass seed over it. All is done. Um, and it was smooth and went well without any issues. Shortly after the priest left and everyone left, then we all convened back at my Aunt Dolly's house where she had some food prepped for us and all just hung out in the unair conditioned house. So that was Wednesday. Thursday was great. The next day, Thursday was our last full day in Maine, and then we were flying out and leaving Friday afternoon. So Wednesday, Thursday were our only full days. Wednesday was consumed with the service and the burial. So Thursday, wide open. What do we do? And I certainly didn't want to sit around in that house all day because it was hot. Um, and, other kids get bored. All the cousins were sleeping over as far as my daughter and her cousins. So there was 5 kids total. Uh, so I think, I can't remember who um, came up with the idea, but we decided to go to the ocean. And what I should say, again, to backtrack, we did swim Wednesday late afternoon, early evening in Waterboro, Maine, in a lake called Little Ossipee. The reason why I want to make a point of that is now this is 2 years in a row that I go to Maine and swim in a lake. I hadn't swam in a Maine lake for years. Last summer, 2021, I swam in Melsom Lake, which is in Acton, Maine. And I was like, man, this is beautiful. Water's nice and cool and clear. And lakes are much different down here in the South. They're just not the same. Brown and snakes, right? So I really appreciated it last year. So I had an opportunity this year to swim in Little Ossipee, which is a lake I grew up on. because that's my cousins, Ronnie, Scott, and Wayne, my Aunt Dolly's kids, and I swam constantly. Even though I didn't live there, I was hanging out at their house constantly because they were just 30 minutes from Sanford. My grandfather would take me there a lot. So I grew up in this lake, and it was nice to jump in it and swim around a little bit. That felt good. So it's become a tradition now. There's two things I have to do when I go to Maine: swim a lake. That's a new tradition. It's 2 years in on that. But for years, when I go home during the summer, I always make a point to put my feet in the ocean. So then we decide we're going to the ocean on Thursday. So I was like, great. But instead of going to the beach, like making it a beach day where we're swimming in the ocean and bringing beach towels and bringing lunches and spending the day on a beach, we didn't do that. We went to Kennebunkport to see the ocean and see the beach, obviously, but also to visit where my grandfather used to lobster out of in Kennebunkport, Maine, where he used to actually anchor his boat. So we thought the younger kids would think that was cool. That part is a much rockier coast, so they really had fun picking up rocks, and we were trying to teach them how to skim rocks in the little bay that we were hanging out at, and then eventually went to a little beach area, put my feet in the water. The kids put their feet in the water. Some probably put a little more than their feet in the water. And then there's this large rock jetty that sticks way out as a way to channel for the boats to come in and then eventually work their way into the bay. So me and my cousin and Skylar, my daughter, walked all the way to the end of it, which was interesting. So we've posted all these pictures online. You may have seen it by now. But it was a nice day, and it involved driving around and seeing a beautiful part of Maine, and killed a lot of time, and it was neat. It's been a long time since we had any kind of outing like that with my aunt, and my cousin Ronnie went with us. My other two cousins didn't go. Scott and Wayne, they were working, but Ronnie had the time. So, and Ronnie and I are close. We all grew up close. As life goes, you grow apart and you move on, and we live 1,000 miles from each other. But it was still cool to be doing these things together with our kids, and each of us had our moms with us. So that was really cool. Got home later that evening and had a good night. Slept as best I could with a fan. And then Friday was just a hangout day, kind of getting through the day, packing, and eventually hit the road sometime in the afternoon from Waterboro. Eventually, heading to Manchester to get on our flight. But we stopped through Sanford. And I was very proud of my mom for this. Leading up to this, or even before we even landed in Manchester in Maine, Skylar wanted to see the house. The house that my mother sold, which was the house she grew up in her whole life. And I grew up in there. And again, we've made some previous videos about that house. So it's a big, unbelievable big deal that it's not in the family anymore. It is weird because it's been in the family for decades. But Skylar wanted to go drive by and see the house, and I was like, oh, I'm okay with that. My mom was like, no, I'm going to pass. You guys can go. And I understood why. I was like, absolutely. I'm not going to force anyone on that, and I knew why she was going to be a little hesitant. So it came Friday, and we were going to work our way through Sanford on the way to the Manchester airport because we wanted to stop by the gravesite one last time. This trip, obviously, we'll visit down the road here, but we wanted to say our goodbyes again. And Skylar was very sweet. She wanted some alone time with her great grandmother, so we thought that was sweet. But the plan was we were going to drop my mom off at McDonald's so she can get an iced coffee, and then Skylar and I were going to drive to the house, see the house, and then come pick her up because I knew she didn't want to go. Well, she changed her mind. She's like, you know what? No, let's go look at the house. It's inevitable. It's something I need to just get over and get used to. I was like, okay. I didn't know what to expect. So we drive to the house, and it was really interesting to see how they've cleaned up a lot. They've replaced windows. They're redoing some of the siding. it looked good. Like it's looking like it's really going to be nice. So that was cool to see. And my mom took it well. I thought she was going to be emotional. She wasn't. I think Skylar choked up a little bit in the back, but for the most part, it was good to see. And we didn't knock on anyone's door or anything. We just kind of hung out. It's at the dead end of a road, so we were just kind of turned around and then looked at the house, noticed some things, pointed out some stuff that we saw that was new, and left. And that was it. Off to the airport, and then the flights home were interesting. This is something that's never happened to me before. So it's our second flight. Uh, there was a little bit of delay in our layover, nothing big. We had to change gates. So I think we were like 45 minutes late on the second flight. Really no big deal. What was weird though is coming into Memphis, and I've never experienced this before. The plane's landing. We're almost at touchdown. We are low. And all of a sudden, it kicks in. You kind of get pushed back in your seat. And next thing you know, we're going up again. Steeply. And you can just tell they floored the jets on that thing. And I'm like, we're going back up. What is going on? It was kind of neat. It was weird because we didn't know why. So that was a little freaky. But it was pretty cool to just be going slow and then just straight back up. To feel the power of the jet was neat. But then we finally kind of level off, and then the like 15 minutes later, the pilot was finally like, "Hey, just so you know, there was some tailwind issue," and which is weird because when we finally landed in Memphis, it was not windy. So I don't really know what was going on there. I think maybe he screwed up. I don't know. So we had to circle all the way around, and then we finally landed. And the landing was rough. I don't know what was going on in that airport, but it was a rough landing. Whatever he had to fight through, he fought through it, and we landed safely. And gosh, we didn't get home. I didn't get to bed until about 3 a.m. Saturday morning. Um, and then that was it. That was the main trip. So it was it was it was really different, and in a good way, and maybe in a little stressful way. But it was definitely a different trip. I found a newfound respect for, again, jumping in a lake. It's really nice, and it's and having to see my daughter have still a relationship with her cousins. She gets to see them once a year. Now it's going to be less time each year because she's not going to her grandmother's for 5 weeks like she's done every summer for her whole life, pretty much. But it's inevitable that I have to keep that tradition going to make sure that my daughter sees her cousins every year and go to Maine every year and appreciate it more. Before, for a long time, going to Maine for me was just like out of necessity for my daughter's sake, for my mother's sake, grandmother's sake. People wanted to see me, or I felt it was important to visit, but I never looked forward to it. I just hated going home. But that's changed now. And that happened last year too when I went home and just tried to enjoy the weather and what Maine offers. Uh, that was good, and this year was even better. Give me a nice lake to jump into, worth the trip. Give me to the ocean. Let me put my feet in the water. Done deal. All is good. So that's it. Hope you all had a good weekend, and hopefully we have some more stories coming your way for band stuff. I'm actually going on the road this week to Harrisburg, Virginia, for a private event. That's why I haven't really promoted it on here, which I'm going to try to do more of. I promoted a show we did in Marion, Wisconsin, um, and I had one friend show up that happened to live in the area. Her name's Nicole. She actually works for me. We had never met before. She's been working with me for 3 years, all virtual, online, and just so happened that we were near her, so she came and visited. That was nice. If it wasn't for this channel, she would not have known that, and I didn't realize she lived that close. So that was cool. Hopefully, I'll announce a show on here, and you live near that area, and come on down, come check it out, come say hello. So more stories to come, y'all, and as always, you have a great night. Thank you.